All right. Is that still projecting up there? Oh, but you can see me. Okay. All right. So before we move on, um, it's really important that we get that reverse and motor starter working. Y'all have proved that y'all can wire up a three-phase motor for high and low voltage. Y'all don't need to constantly be doing that. So Caden wired up one for the correct voltage, ran it to a table, and it'll give us a lot of opportunities so that y'all be able to turn a motor on and off and do everything you need without having to get into the motor every time. And that would make it easier for us to troubleshoot and make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to. Because just a dumb mistake on that, and we might have a couple of times where you practice a couple more times just to make sure that you get that. But we're going to be rolling pretty hard, and part of that is there's no sense in having to rewire up a motor to then do this because there's just too many things to troubleshoot. We know that motor runs, right? So to wire up to that motor, you just run to the three terminals, the three black terminals in the bottom left of that motor control cabinet and the green terminal for your ground, and you're good to go. Okay. What we are changing is, all right, so we're going to have the motor out here, and it's mounted to a table, and it's got a pulley on it, and all that will be good for her industrial mechanics class too. So they can be doing alignments and stuff on there, and have a motor that actually turns. Instead of having like floppy high voltage out, or even the 120 when you're dealing with one of the 24-volt power supplies, everything from this point forward, you'll prove it. You'll prove the low voltage stuff outside of the cabinet, but you're going to have to go into the cabinet to do it. All right, so you definitely need to tag out the breaker, the bottom right breaker that feeds that motor control cabinet. I need a tag on it anytime you've got that cabinet open, okay? And you need to verify, okay? Because that'll put you on your butt and could kill you if you're, wrapped up on it, okay? So if you're in that cabinet, your tag's on that breaker, and you're verifying that the power is off, okay? It comes in, and we got three blacks and a green, right? So that's our power. We've got some screw terminals that we made buses out of. Okay, down on the bottom, I might as well make this black. Down at the bottom, we've got three black terminals that we're going to plug in those wires that go out to there. Okay, and a green terminal that is mounted in that box to the screw. Okay, it's called an equipment grounding conductor. Okay, and when you need to, like, this green should always be tied back to that green. So verify that that's the case, all right? So all those greens need to be tied together, all right? We also have a white in there now. I can't draw a white, but it's 3 blacks and a white, right? And then the green. Is that how it's set up? It's a yellow terminal, or kind of a gold terminal. And we'll say that yellow is our neutral, but it's a white, right? All right, so when you need 24 volts, you're going to be going through a 24 volt power supply, and it's going to have a 120, a 0, and a ground. And you just pull off of one of these hots, go to the 120, go from the 0 to the yellow terminal, right? And go green to the green terminal. All right. And then on the other side of that, you got 24 volts and 0 volts coming out. Okay. So you don't have to think about the motor too hard. Like, we're going to cover it up. When you turn it and you push the right button, it goes. Okay. On the front of that cabinet, Kaden put in a new box that'll have an HMI. It's got 3 buttons down, 3 lights, right? We'll do forward, reverse, and stop for now. Okay. There's a big hole in that box, so you just fish the wire through, open that box, fish the wire through. It's hung on to the front part of that motor control cabinet. Okay. Now, the fun part. Up top on our high side, okay, we got contactors that do this little number here. All right, so you got 6 contactors, or 6 contacts. All right, if I twist these up top and then twist them on the end, then I didn't change anything. I go from 1 to 3 up top, and then I go from 1 to 3 on the bottom. I zigged and then I zagged right back to where I was. Okay, so what you want to do is a dot means that it's connected. If it's just straight through, doesn't mean it's connected. All right, so we're going to put a dot right there. Instead of putting a lot of little humps or whatever, those sometimes get lost. So if it just crosses, if you just have a T like this, it is not connected. Okay? So let's say L1, L2, and L3. So we'll go to L1 to L1, L2 to L2, right? And L3 to L3. Kosher? All right. Now on this side, we'll do L3 to L1, L2 to L2, because we're only changing 2 of them. All right. Let me make these shorter. All right, so L3 to L1, then that's going out. L2 to L2, and that's going out. L3 to L1, and that's going out. Okay. Now on our schematic, we have overloads. Okay. That part of the symbol right there represents the heating element that's going to knock out the normally closed contact in the control circuit. Okay. So by wiring into those that have the integrated overloads, that's already wired in. Okay. Now, when that trips, then the overload contacts, which are, what is it, 96 and 95 on the contactors, they open up and they kill whatever's in line with this. Okay. So these will be overloads. I want to show you two different ways of doing it, and then I want to show you how we're going to do it. Okay. So back in the day, we'd have a control transformer, and that'd take, the 240 or 480 and put it down to 120. And then would have 120 control voltage, right? Would ground out one side of this, would say that was 0 volts. Okay. And then we'd be able to do our ladder diagram with our control logic. Nowadays, it's getting more and more prevalent that you'll be going through a 24 volt power supply. All right, so you'll have 24 volts, and that's going to be one side of your ladder diagram, and 0 volts will be the second. Okay? All right. So now you're still going to have to wire this up like I showed on the other picture, right, to get the 120 that it makes the 24 volts from. Now, when I see a schematic like this, I just understand it. Like, I've seen them enough that, like, and I've played with them enough that I know what's up with them. All right. You need to get used to that, because this is how they're going to look from a logical standpoint. Okay. Now, usually old school, they'll put overloads right there. Okay. That would kill it from the low side of the motor. The problem I have with that is, let's say I had a motor and I had a switch, and it's my safety switch, right? And I'm coming in from my power. I'm going out that motor, and I put the switch on the low side. Cool? All right. So as soon as it hits ground or hits the neutral, boom, like I've got power. What happens if this wire gets loose and it touches metal? It's going to short it out. It's going to turn the motor on. Okay. So we favor, and I don't know if it's completely OSHA. I'm going to be taking a 501, so I'll know after like January or February. But you should be doing switching on the high side. You notice all the contacts are on here, on the high side. It's making and breaking the high voltage, instead of, breaking, on a low side. All right. So it still works if you make or break on the low side, but if you have a short or, whatever, that motor fails into an unpredictable state. If I have a motor and I have a switch on the high side, even if that wire right here starts flopping around or something, like, no big deal. All right. So you want to switch your hots. So that's kind of bad. The reason they do it that way is to shorten wire, right? Now, and I would still put them over here, okay? And you can like do that all in the box, where in the cabinet, so that those are on that side, so they're on the high side of the motor. I thought of one reason that we wouldn't want all the overloads in line with the stop, and that would be, let's say we had something that like rolled, and we rolled a piece of metal in, and it got stopped. It like, stalled, and so it tripped the overload in the forward direction. We might want to be able to back it back out, right? But if that's not the case, if we want it to stop all functionality for us to fix it or whatever, we can do something like this. And this is what you're going to do with the reverse and motor starter. And hopefully after today or after this video, it'll be a lot easier to do. Okay, let's go ahead and kill this line right here. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to come out of the 24 volts. We're going to go into each overload. Then we're going to go out. We're going to go to our stop. Then we're going to go to our forward. Then we're going to go to our normally closed contact of our reverse. Then we go to the coil for our motor. And then to that 0. Okay? And then right here, we've got our seal-in contact. So this is going to be our ALTS contact on our contactor. And we're also coming on this side of that stop to put our reverse. So this will be our reverse contact. This will be our ALTS for our reverse and contact. We'll go through the normally closed contact of our forward, and then if everything is good, we go through our reverse. Okay? All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start kind of free thinking a little bit. Let me take the opacity of this down and let's get a different color. All right. A node is where anything is connected to something else. Okay? So what all is connected right here? That's 5 things connected. All right. Now for ease of like talking, like these switches, you can wire them up in any direction. All right. But when we put it, like, let's say this is 24 volts, and we'll say this is the high side of that overload, and this will be the low side of that overload, but it'd be the high side of this overload, and that'd be the low side of that one, right? So if you're like the low side of the first overload, you know exactly what you're talking about, okay? So this would be the high side of my ALTS, the high side of my forward, the high side of my reverse, and the high side of my reverse ALTS, right? Tied to the low side of my stop. Okay, it's closer to 0 than the other side, or vice versa. Right? All right. This side is closer to 24 volts than this one is. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to be able to rearrange this stuff. Okay. What is in the cabinet and what is in the operator's station. Let's go ahead and let's color in this forward button right here, right? This reverse button right here, and this stop button right here. Okay? Cool. Now, realize that this line right here can be as long or as short as we need it to be. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to lump those things together, and we're going to lump everything else that's in the motor control cabinet together. Okay? Before we do that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to number stuff. Okay? So my overloads are 96 and 95, right? 96 and 95. Cool. that's the terminals on my contactor. My alts are 13 and 14, correct? Now your reverse motor starter may or may not have the same numbers. Okay, but just go find the numbers for it and write them in. Like, this will make your life a lot easier. And then I'd have A1, A2, A1, A2. And these reversing ones right here, like the normally closed, are actually in the box too, right? That contact and that contact are in the operator station. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that. I'm going to squeeze that down real quick so we can still see it, but then I'm going to squeeze this down real quick. Put it up here. Squeeze it down just a little bit more. That work? Yeah. All right, so we'll turn that off. So now we've got everything, but we've got more room to do stuff. Okay? Draw it out. Okay? Like, draw out what you've got. I've got a Ford. I've got a Ford contact. The way it looks is it's got 13, and then it kind of goes diagonal because that overload is in the way. We've got 14 over here. Okay. Cool. We've got A1, and we've got a coil that goes down to A2. That's where it actually is, like kind of in relation to each other. And then I've got a 96. I don't remember what side it's on. I think it's like this. We got a 96 and a 95 that are normally closed contacts of the overload. Okay. And we've got two of those. All right. So I'm going to I'm going to draw one more. This will be our forward side. And then we'll do one more. 13, 14, 96, overload, 97, A1, A2. All right. Now, let's make our operator station. We've got a stop button. It's going to be normally closed. And it's only got one contact on it. We've got a forward button that's normally open, and it has a normally closed contact on it too. And we've got reverse, which is the same. Okay. All right, so all we need to do is connect the dots. Oh, we also have a 24-volt power supply over here in in the cabinet. All right. Cool. All right. I'm going to draw some lines on here, but I'm not going to draw them all. I'll just draw a small line and then like say go to somewhere. All right, because it'll get really confusing. But I can just start walking my way through here. I can start one channel, or I could work my way backwards. 0 volts is hooked up to A2 of both of them. You know, I could work my way back through there. Sometimes it's easier to work your way from the middle, from the out to the middle. Let's just start with this 24. What does 24 do? It goes through 96 of 1, right? So it goes into 96 of 1, and then it goes out of 95 of that same 1 into 90. Let's put a different color there. Let's do this bright blue. All right, so we go out of 94, or 24 volts. We go into 96 of the first overload. Sorry. All right. So come out of the 24 volt power supply, goes into 96 of one of the overloads, comes out of 95 of that overload into 96 of the other overload. And then it comes out, I don't know why I put 97 right there. That'd be 95, right? Then it comes out at 95 and it goes where? To the stop. The high side of the stop, right? So we're just going to say stop, high side. Okay? Cool. And then we're just going to arbitrarily say this is the high side over here. All right? So we'll say this is to 95 of the reverse, because that's where it came from, right? So now I don't have to draw a line down there and start confusing it when we have a bunch of stuff going. Okay? Y'all good? All right. Now, that got us all the way from 24 volts to this side right here. All right. Now, when we come out of the stop, we're going to 4 different things. We're going to the high side of it, like the forward and reverse. Like, so it's arbitrary which one's the high side. We're going to make these the high side just so we don't have to crisscross applesauce, right? That cool? All right, so if we don't have it stopped, then that 24 volts is going to our contact so that we can let stuff in. Okay? Now, it's also going to 13, right? It's also going to our 2 alts contacts. All right? We've got alts right here and alts right here. So on this side, it's also going to alts 13s. All right, now instead of doing 2 wires, what we can do is we can jumper this 13 and this 13, okay? And then go to, we'll just say low side of the stop, or stop low side. So stop low side. This one's going to the stop high side. That one's going to the stop low side. Okay. Now, with those 3 wires and then that jumper, or those 3 jumpers and that 1 wire, we've got all of this taken care of now, don't we? All right. So now what? We diverged in the woods. All right, there are going to be different things that go to different things. All right. We need 14 to be tied onto like right here and right here. So on the this will be the low side of the Ford. It's going to go in to the normally closed contact of the reverse, and it also needs to go back to the forward 14, right? So this is also going to go back to forward 14, which is right here. Okay. Now I want you to realize what's going on there. 14, we diverged, and now we're coming back together. On the low side of the Ford, we're hooked up to the high side of the reverse, normally closed, and we're hooked up to 14 on the forward contact. Okay. And there's a magic to this, right? Because once we come out of the reverse, we're going into the high side of the normally closed Ford, and we're going to go to the reverse 14 also. Okay. So there's magic there. Like there's a balance there. So in between the forward contact and the reverse normally closed, we're going to the forward 14. Between the low side of the reverse and the high side of the forward normally closed, we're going to R14. All right. If you label them, it makes it a lot easier. Okay. So that's 2 wires going out. All right. So we took care of this 14 also. Now, this reverse one is actually coming from the Ford, right? Like that normally closed reverse. That's this right here. Okay. That's going to A1 of the Ford. So Ford A1. So that's right there. So that's 1, 2, 3 wires. Fourth. When we come out of this Ford normally closed, that's going to the reverse A1. So that's this right here. Now we've gotten all the way to these 2 points right here. We go through those coils, and then we come out of A2 and go to 0. So we can jumper that and then go to 0 volts. Okay. All this does is, like, if you label it good on your schematic, then what you're doing is you're spreading things out to where they are physically. Okay. Like, now you can see A2s are tied together and they're tied to 0. Okay. A1s were A1s. They're coming out of the opposite button. They're normally closed contact. So yeah, that's cool. Ford 14 is tied to Ford 14 is tied to the low side of the forward contact, yes, and the high side of the reverse contact, normally closed contact. And the opposite is true for the reverse, right? Let me see if I can't doctor this up to make it a little bit prettier. But I think if you go by this, you're going to be able to do this in about 20 minutes. Okay? All right, so like practice drawing out your components, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out here. Do this little number right here. this. What in the world? I think it forgot my pencil. My pencil. I'll make it a little bit thicker. I'll do this one. All right, so I'm going to get this as big as I can. So that y'all can use it. Like, I'm going to leave it on the video for a little bit. All right. Let me draw out this 95 just a little bit better. 95 on the reverse. So when you get done, you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 wires this time. All right, so if you need to pause the video, this is up there pretty good. When you get done with the controls, okay, verify that the contactor is clicking back and forth, okay. Actually, we'll go ahead and wire up the high voltage side of that, like the jumper and the T1 and T3s. And so once you get done with the control side, you can't really screw it up if we do the high side right. All right, as long as you leave the high side alone. The worst that could happen would be you would try to pull in reverse and forward at the same time, and the mechanical interlock will get you, keep you from doing that. All right. I don't like that though. Like, I want you to be able to see what's going on with the contactor without having the door open. That's why we have the normally open contacts on. Never mind. It's going to convolute it. I want to make sure that y'all get a reversing contactor going, because what's going to happen is that motor stays the same, and we're just going to start adding a ton of stuff on top of that motor that we can do once you get the hardest thing you'll wire up is reverse motor starter. Period. Everything else, like even though PLC seems harder, like the wiring for that is super simple because we'll do all the interlocking and stuff in there. And on a drive, it's even simpler. Okay. Because it's just 3 wires out and you need a reverse, and then the drive does the reversing for you. Okay. What questions y'all got? Like, y'all are gonna do a reversing motor starter again. Like, I think y'all had a few, missteps, and like it just wasn't rolling right. I think the system's gonna be a lot better now, and I think this might help out a lot more with the actual wiring of it. But you don't necessarily need me. Like, if it was a different schematic, like, or different contactors or different whatever, like, I do want you to do what I did, right? Kind of start moving stuff to where they exist in the real world. Like, okay, all my operator stuff is over here, all my, control cabinets over here. And then start, like, I know how to do this because I've done it a lot. Like, if this was the first time looking at it, it would take me a while to be like, oh, I could do it better this way. Like, if I jumpered this, I could do it, Y'all understand why we've got the overloads in the front? Since they're all like that, if either one of them has an overload, then it shuts down the whole thing. Okay? All right. Well, y'all cut out, like, come at your regular time, or come at whatever time you want for your lab to be. Like, because on new mini term, you get to re-register for a new time. They're the same times as they were before, like ABC and all that are the same times. So if you're like, I'd rather come, at this time, come at that time, and the first time you come in, like, we'll have that registration set up so you can go ahead and register it. Because I forgot to get it done last night before I passed out, just exhausted. But if it's the same time, no big deal. You'll still register, but it'll be 6 new classes instead of the other classes, so we can keep track of the roll from here. All right. Well, y'all have a dandy old day.